What's up guys, my name is Trail, better known as Budget Bill, and today I have another stimulus update video for you. Today we're going to have a recap of the entire week surrounding the new HEALS Act bill, the second big fat stimulus check, how both parties are not agreeing with the new proposed bill, as well as the unemployment benefits expiring, as well as many other stories that may have missed throughout the week. Those are just some of our topics today, but before we get started, if this is your first time to this channel, hey, welcome and glad to have you. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you can be a part of it. I would appreciate it. Also, be sure to like this video as it really helps the channel grow and it tells YouTube to share this video with others. Okay, now let's go ahead and jump right into the video. What's up folks, and thanks for sticking around. So earlier this week was off to a great start, and that's because Congress returned from the recess break and a new bill called the HEALS Act was presented by the Senate. This was a much long awaited bill that the American people have been drastically waiting for quite some time now, as millions of Americans are still struggling from the effects of the pandemic with either losing their jobs, having their hours cut, or just no work options at all, and with the first economic relief payment not being enough to support most families. So with this new HEALS Act coming out, the American people have their hope increased for an opportunity to get a little more help from the government to sustain these economic times. Now, we all know that this new HEALS Act was only the beginning pieces of the puzzle, and that the negotiations would have to begin to have more of a balanced bill that is bipartisan between both sides. So it was safe to assume that this proposed bill was more like the bottom floor, if you will, and hopes that a proposed bill will improve over the next few weeks. Well, as the week continues, a lot of chatter within both parties as they digest this new HEALS Act. And then on Tuesday, the Republicans and the Democrats made very little progress towards the stimulus relief package, which has caused the congressional leaders to start blaming one another. I mean, the Republicans tried to pass a standalone bill to extend the unemployment benefits. However, that was voted down by the Democrats. So then the Democrats tried to pass their own separate standalone bill, and the Republicans shot that down as well. So ultimately, nothing really got done as far as the extension of the unemployment benefits, which was the federal boost of $600 per week. And then on Wednesday, the Fed Chair Powell spoke at a conference and stated that the U.S. economy is directly tied to the pandemic itself, and that the progress that the U.S. economy can make is if we can see the virus vaccine develop for this illness. He goes on to say that the path of the economy depends on the path of the virus and how it continues to spread and on the measures that the U.S. takes to try to keep this virus in check. This includes the stimulus measures as well as the stimulus package that we are trying to develop is going to help the American people. He also stated that the pace of the recovery has slowed down considering the spike in cases as of recently and the increased deaths and hospitalizations across all states. So he says the Federal Reserve will do everything in its power to continue to provide support for the American people, and it has no plans to increase rates anytime soon. And he also is pushing Congress to pass more stimulus. And then we have Mr. Trumpy come in and say later that day that he supports higher stimulus checks for the American people. Y'all remember a few weeks ago when Trumpy came out and said he actually supports more money than the Democrats do. Well, he brought that up again, and this time he states that he supports it and that a second stimulus check could be way higher than just $1,200. He said that he would like to see it be very high because he loves the American people and he wants the people to get exactly what they need. But then later he claws back a little and said that he doesn't know exactly how high that he can envision it, but he does want it to be more than $1,200. And then during a second speaking engagement, Mr. Trumpy urged Congress to stop the evictions that are going on in most states. As you know, evictions had been on pause since the pandemic started, and now most of the moratoriums have been expiring. So Trump is urging them and Congress to stop the evictions and get another stimulus check check passed. Trump stated that Congress can get the rest of the proposed bill figured out later, but for right now, stop the evictions and get a stimulus check passed for right now. I mean, for one, the stimulus checks are the only thing that both parties can agree on at this time. So why not pass that portion of the bill to help the American people? And I agree with you, Mr. Trumpy. And then on Thursday, the GDP numbers were released and they were horrible. And for those that don't know, the GDP is the gross domestic product results that are used to track the health of the nation's economy. These results are very important to economists and investors, as they use this data to calculate the health and the size of our economy. So those quarterly results showed a drop by 9.5%. This was a record decline and the largest decline in U.S. history since they began publishing this data 70 years ago. The economists say that these results show as a cautionary sign of what could be in store for the U.S. if the economy continues to slip away, especially as more businesses continue to shut down because of the increased cases statewide. Then we also had the weekly job numbers come out, in which we saw a second straight week of increased jobless claims at around 1.4 million people. The expected claims was around 1.45 million people, but these results was the 19th straight week in which jobless claims totaled at least 1 million people or more. And we can probably expect these to continue to rise as more businesses are forced to shut back down again. And then on late Thursday, we were surprisingly introduced to a new family-focused proposed bill that was presented by 4 Republican senators. This bill is called the Virus Assistance for the American Families Act. It was proposed by Senators Bill Cassidy, Steve Daines, Mitt Romney, and Marco Rubio. Now, this bill was focused on families of large sizes because they felt like the previous stimulus checks doesn't account for if you have a large family. And this proposed bill would offer that additional increase for each family member. This bill would provide $1,000 in payments to all American citizens regardless of age or the dependent status. As long as you have a Social Security number, you would qualify for this stimulus check. So if you have a family of 4, you could receive up to $4,000 with this proposed bill, which is more than you would according to the CARES Act. Senator Rubio stated that as Congress continues to negotiate another economic response to the pandemic, we should prioritize direct assistance to those who need it the most. And I can agree with you, Marco Rubio. And then moving on to Friday, the U.S. reports more than 1,000 virus-related deaths for a 4th consecutive day. This thing does not look like it's letting up at all. Do your part and keep America safe again. I believe 70,000 cases were reported on Thursday alone. Now Dr. Fauci has to speak in front of Congress again, in which his concerns is now that the cases are increasing at a rapid rate, we still are coming up on the flu season, in which this thing could get much worse. So we need to all do our part, guys. And then on Friday, Steve Mnuchin met with Nancy Pelosi for 2 hours. And after that meeting, he stated that they are still far apart on most issues. However, they did make progress on some issues. He didn't exactly say what those were, but at least there's some progress that we can see that's going on before the weekend hits us. Mnuchin also added that negotiators will return and continue talks on Friday as well as on Saturday. So that's good news as well. Earlier in the day, Mr. Trumpy tried to get a short-term deal passed to extend the unemployment benefits by 1 week, but that was shot down by Nancy Pelosi, as she feels like 1 week extension will be worthless without any expectations of a proper bill coming in the near future. And then we have Chuck Schumer state that he doesn't think that Republicans really understand the complexity and the scale of this problem that we have in our hands, and that a short-term deal just won't cut it. He reiterated that they need to have a plan in place that's broader, that would ultimately help the American people. Now, as the day goes on and was winding down in Washington, Congress did make a vow that they would be working throughout the weekend on getting things done and getting more progress towards a next stimulus package. So that's positive, as most Americans feel like Congress just doesn't really work at all, and if they do, just not fast enough. So we are glad to hear that they will be working over the weekend. Hopefully they can show up on Monday with some actual progress in hand to share with the American people. And then fast forward to today on Saturday, August the 1st. The unemployment federal boost of $600 has officially expired with no replacement at this time. Now, some states have already stopped paying the $600 federal boost weeks ago, which has caused a lot of strain to go for the American people. But for those that were still receiving it, their time has come to an end at this time. There are no more $600 federal boost unemployment that's being added to your normal unemployment payment check. So if that is you or you were receiving those extra benefits, you can expect your next unemployment check to be $600 less than before. Now, the HEALS Act as well as other officials are still pushing for a replacement for the federal boost of unemployment benefits. Numbers have been kicked around for a $200 per week replacement with a maximum of $500, and then most Republicans still want the return to work bonus incentive to be the only option for the replacement. Moving on, the White House has really been pushing for the liabilities protection for businesses to be included in the next stimulus package. Mitch McConnell stated that last week that this is one of the top priorities to include and another bill would not be signed without it. Fast forward, the White House says now on Friday that they are now open to striking a deal without the liability protections included. So even though that was Mitch McConnell's top priority, Mr. Trumpy said he'd rather get something in the short term to stop the evictions and get another stimulus check into the American people's hands instead, even if that means to propose the liability protections for businesses at a later date. So this right here definitely shows some divide within the White House as everyone is negotiating this bill and trying to make everybody happy at the same time, while losing people with this $600 unemployment benefits to most Americans. Now, all in all, this country still has a lot of work to do, from Congress to the government to the individual states and so on. These illness cases have been increasing very rapidly, mostly because most states have reopened, which allow people to interact more with each other. So as the numbers keep increasing, more and more businesses have been shutting down or limit the amount of people in their establishment. This definitely does not help our economy bounce back. It puts a tough strain on everyone, and it could get worse as time goes on, which is why the government has to step in right now and offer more help for the American people, which it appears that they want to with the second stimulus check. But from what I read and I can see on the news channels is another $1,200 big fat stimulus check is just not enough. The struggle is real and people are hurting for more assistance. Unfortunately, the American people are in a helpless place where everything relies on Congress to make the right decisions and provide assistance for us. We must all come together and help one another out when we can and when the opportunity presents itself. So that's about it regarding the second stimulus check update news. I did want to touch on a story that I thought was pretty funny. Mr. Trump tweeted out on Thursday that he proposes that the November election to be proposed to a later date, ultimately because he feels the election will have tons of fraud and because he is going to have a hard time leaving the White House if he doesn't win that election. So this is a way he can stay in the White House much longer than anticipated. So that's it, guys. That's all I have for you today on the Stimulus Update News channel. If you enjoyed these Stimulus Update News videos, definitely give this video a like, as it definitely helps out the growth of this channel. Also, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, this is a great time to click on the subscribe button down below as well as the bell next to it so you can be notified every time I upload new videos. Again, hey, I appreciate you guys stopping by and watching, and I hope to see you on the next video. Peace.